Prison guard dog Ranger sensed something was wrong in C Block, but nobody took him seriously. But 3 minutes later, when chaos erupted, they would see just how right he was and how many lives he had saved. Riverside State Penitentiary stood like a fortress against the gray October sky in upstate New York, its imposing concrete walls and razor wire barriers housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. With a population of 2,400 inmates spread across 4 maximum security blocks, the facility required constant vigilance and the most advanced security measures available. Guard Kevin Thompson, 35 years old with 12 years of correctional experience etched into the lines around his eyes, walked the familiar corridors of the evening shift. His footsteps echoed off the polished concrete floors as he conducted his routine security checks, a clipboard in one hand and his radio crackling occasionally with status updates from other guards throughout the complex. Beside him trotted his constant companion and partner, Ranger, a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois whose lean, muscular frame and alert dark eyes spoke of years of specialized training. Ranger had been Kevin's partner for 4 years now, and in that time, the dog had proven himself to be absolutely exceptional at detecting contraband, identifying potential threats, and maintaining order through his mere presence. The partnership between Kevin and Ranger had become legendary among the correctional staff. Ranger's nose had uncovered countless smuggling attempts, his instincts had prevented multiple violent incidents, and his unwavering loyalty had made Kevin one of the most effective guards in the facility. Other officers often joked that Ranger was worth 3 human guards, but Kevin knew it wasn't really a joke, it was the truth. As they made their way through the main corridor that Tuesday evening, everything appeared normal on the surface. The institutional fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their harsh, sterile glow over the scene. Inmates in C Block were secured in their cells for evening lockdown, most occupied with watching television, reading, or simply lying on their narrow bunks waiting for lights out. But something was bothering Ranger, and Kevin could sense it immediately. The dog's usual calm, professional demeanor had been replaced by a subtle but unmistakable tension. His ears were slightly more erect than normal, his gait just a fraction more alert, and Kevin could see the way Ranger's nostrils flared occasionally as if detecting something in the air that didn't belong. "What's got you worked up tonight, boy?" Kevin asked quietly, reaching down to scratch behind Ranger's ears in the way that usually calmed the dog. But Ranger didn't relax under the familiar touch. Instead, he turned his head towards C Block, his body language shifting into what Kevin had learned to recognize as his early warning posture, not quite full alert, but definitely elevated awareness of potential danger. C Block housed 200 of the facility's most problematic inmates, men convicted of violent crimes, those with extensive disciplinary records, and individuals who had demonstrated an inability to follow prison rules in lower security environments. It was always the most challenging section to manage, requiring constant supervision and a zero-tolerance approach to any signs of trouble. As Kevin and Ranger approached the entrance to C Block, the dog's behavior became increasingly agitated. Ranger began pulling slightly on his leash, not in a playful way but with the focused intensity that Kevin had seen countless times before when the dog was tracking a scent or detecting something amiss. "Easy, Ranger," Kevin murmured, but his own senses were now on high alert. In 4 years of partnership, he had learned never to ignore Ranger's instincts. The dog's record was virtually perfect. When Ranger sensed danger, there was always danger, even when human observation couldn't detect it. Ranger stopped abruptly about 20 feet from the C Block entrance, his nose lifted high as he sampled the air with deep, analytical breaths. His tail was rigid, his muscles tense, and Kevin could see the slight tremor that ran through the dog's frame when he was processing complex sensory information. "What is it, boy? What do you smell?" Kevin asked, though he knew Ranger couldn't answer in words. Still, after years of working together, Kevin had learned to read his partner's body language like a book, and every signal Ranger was sending indicated that something was seriously wrong. The dog began to pace in tight circles, his attention never leaving the direction of C Block. This wasn't his usual behavior when detecting drugs or weapons, this was something different, something that seemed to be causing Ranger genuine distress rather than just professional alertness. Guard Martinez, a veteran officer with 15 years of experience, approached from the opposite end of the corridor. "Kevin, everything okay? Your dog looks like he's seen a ghost." "I don't know," Kevin replied, his voice tight with concern. "Ranger's picking up on something, but I can't figure out what. He's been agitated for the past 10 minutes, and it's getting worse." Martinez looked through the reinforced glass windows into C Block, where the inmates appeared to be going about their normal evening routines. "Looks quiet in there. Most of them are watching TV or just lying around. Maybe Ranger's having an off night." But Kevin shook his head firmly. "Ranger doesn't have off nights. If he's this worked up, there's a reason for it." As if responding to Kevin's confidence in his abilities, Ranger's behavior escalated dramatically. The dog began to whine, a low, urgent sound that Kevin had only heard a handful of times in their partnership, and each previous instance had preceded a major security incident. Ranger pulled harder on his leash, trying to drag Kevin away from the C Block entrance while simultaneously keeping his attention focused on whatever threat he perceived inside. It was as if the dog was torn between investigating the danger and protecting his handler from it. "Control, this is Thompson," Kevin said into his radio, deciding that Ranger's behavior was too extreme to ignore. "I'm outside C Block with my K9, and he's showing strong alert behavior. Request permission to conduct a visual inspection of the block." The response came back immediately. "Thompson, this is Control. All monitors show normal activity in C Block. Inmates are secured for evening count. What kind of alert behavior are you seeing?" Kevin watched Ranger, who was now pawing at the ground in agitation, his breathing rapid and shallow. "Ranger is showing extreme distress. He's trying to pull me away from the block entrance while maintaining visual contact with whatever he's detecting. In 4 years of partnership, I've never seen him this agitated without cause." There was a pause before Control responded. "Thompson, stand by. We're reviewing all camera feeds and conducting an electronic systems check." While they waited, Martinez moved closer to the C Block windows, trying to get a better view of the inmates inside. "I'm not seeing anything unusual, Kevin. Everyone seems to be in their cells, doing normal evening activities." But Ranger's distress was reaching a crescendo. The dog was now alternating between trying to pull Kevin away from the area and attempting to get closer to investigate whatever he was detecting. His whines had become more frequent and urgent, and Kevin could see the whites of the dog's eyes, a sign of extreme stress that he had only witnessed during the most serious incidents. "Control, this is Thompson again. I'm requesting immediate backup at C Block. My K9's behavior indicates imminent danger. I've never seen him react this strongly to anything. Thompson, we're showing all green on electronic monitoring. No unusual heat signatures, no movement outside of normal parameters. Are you certain your K9 isn't malfunctioning?" The word malfunctioning made Kevin's jaw clench. Control room operators who had never worked with dogs didn't understand that these animals didn't malfunction, they detected things that electronic systems couldn't pick up. "Negative, Control. Ranger is not malfunctioning. He's detecting something that our electronic systems are missing." Just as Kevin finished his transmission, Ranger's behavior shifted into something Kevin had never seen before. The dog suddenly stopped his agitated pacing and went completely rigid, his body locked in a perfect point towards C Block. Every muscle in the animal's frame was taut, his breathing had become silent and controlled, and his gaze was fixed with laser-like intensity on something beyond the reinforced glass. This was different from Ranger's normal alert posture. This was the stance of an animal that had detected immediate, life-threatening danger. Kevin felt his own adrenaline spike in response. "Control, I need backup at C Block immediately. Ranger has gone to full threat assessment posture." "Thompson, what exactly are you requesting backup for? We need specific information about the threat you're reporting." But before Kevin could respond, Ranger made his decision. The dog lunged forward with such sudden force that Kevin nearly lost his grip on the leash. Ranger was no longer trying to investigate or get closer to whatever he detected, now he was desperately trying to pull Kevin away from the area entirely. "Martinez, get on the radio and call for additional officers," Kevin commanded as he allowed Ranger to pull him backward down the corridor. "Something is about to happen, and when it does, we're going to need all the help we can get." Martinez looked confused but reached for his radio. "Control, this is Martinez. Thompson is requesting immediate backup at C Block based on K9 alert behavior." Ranger continued pulling Kevin backward, his urgency increasing with each step. The dog kept looking back towards C Block, as if expecting something terrible to emerge from that direction at any moment. "Kevin, what exactly is Ranger detecting?" Martinez asked as he jogged alongside them. "I don't know," Kevin replied, breathing hard as he tried to keep up with Ranger's determined retreat. "But in 4 years, he's never been wrong about danger. If he's this desperate to get us away from C Block, there's about to be serious trouble." As if summoned by Kevin's words, the facility's electronic systems suddenly began experiencing cascading failures. The first sign was a flicker in the overhead lighting, followed immediately by a discordant alarm tone that Kevin had never heard before. "System malfunction in C Block," came the urgent voice over the radio. "Electronic locks are showing irregular readings. Stand by for assessment." Ranger's pulling became even more frantic, and Kevin realized with growing horror that his partner had somehow detected the impending system failure before it happened. The dog's extraordinary senses had picked up electrical irregularities, unusual sounds, or other environmental changes that preceded the electronic malfunction. "Control, this is Thompson. Evacuate all personnel from C Block vicinity immediately. Whatever my K9 detected is happening now." But it was too late for a controlled response. With a series of mechanical clicks that echoed through the corridor like gunshots, every electronic lock in C Block disengaged simultaneously. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, the sound of 200 cell doors swinging open filled the air like thunder. Kevin watched in stunned realization as Ranger's desperate warning suddenly made perfect sense. The dog hadn't been detecting contraband or weapons, he had somehow sensed the planning and preparation for a coordinated riot that would begin the moment the electronic systems failed. "All units, code red at C Block." Kevin shouted into his radio as the first inmates began emerging from their cells. "Mass security breach. This is not a drill." Ranger had positioned them at the optimal distance, close enough for Kevin to see what was happening and provide crucial information to the response team, but far enough away to avoid being caught in the initial chaos. What emerged from C Block was Kevin's worst nightmare realized. 200 of the facility's most dangerous inmates poured out of their cells in a coordinated wave, many carrying improvised weapons they had apparently been crafting and hiding for this exact moment. Broken pieces of metal, sharpened plastic implements, and makeshift clubs appeared in the hands of inmates who moved with the organized purpose of a military unit rather than the chaotic panic of an accidental escape. "This was planned," Kevin breathed into his radio as he watched the scene unfold. "This wasn't a system malfunction, this was a coordinated breakout attempt. The inmates somehow caused the electronic failure." Ranger remained on high alert beside him, no longer trying to retreat but now positioned protectively between Kevin and the emerging threat. The dog's training had kicked in completely, having successfully warned his handler of the danger, he was now prepared to defend against it. The lead inmates moved quickly toward the main corridor, but their advance was slowed by the facility's design features that Kevin was now grateful for. Multiple security checkpoints, reinforced barriers, and narrow passages that prevented large groups from moving quickly through the building. "Control, this is Thompson providing real-time intelligence from C Block perimeter. Estimated 200 inmates involved in coordinated riot. They have improvised weapons and appear to be following a predetermined plan. The electronic system failure was not accidental. Additional guards were arriving now, their boots pounding on the concrete as they took defensive positions throughout the facility. The prison's riot protocol was being implemented with military precision, but Kevin knew that without Ranger's early warning, the initial response would have been catastrophic. If Kevin had been conducting his normal security check when the doors opened, he would have been directly in the path of 200 armed inmates. The injury or death toll among staff could have been enormous. The next hour was controlled chaos as the facility's emergency response teams worked to contain the riot and restore order. Kevin and Ranger were repositioned to a secure observation post where they could continue providing intelligence to the tactical teams moving to retake C Block. From their vantage point, Kevin could see that Ranger's early warning had been absolutely crucial to minimizing casualties. The dog's insistent alerts had not only saved Kevin's life but had provided the 3 to 4 minutes of advance notice that allowed security teams to implement defensive measures before the riot began. "Thompson, this is Captain Rodriguez," came the voice over Kevin's radio. "We need your assessment of inmate organization and leadership. You had the best advance view of their initial deployment." Kevin keyed his radio while keeping one hand on Ranger, who remained alert but calmer now that they were in a secure position. "Captain, this was definitely pre-planned. The inmates moved in coordinated groups, and they had designated leaders directing traffic flow. Someone on the inside has been organizing this for weeks or months. The tactical response teams were making steady progress, using non-lethal suppression methods to gradually push the rioting inmates back toward their cells. Tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets were being deployed with surgical precision to minimize permanent injury while restoring order. Ranger's role had shifted from early warning to ongoing intelligence gathering. The dog's acute hearing and scent detection abilities allowed him to provide Kevin with information about inmate movements and locations that the human officers couldn't detect. "Kevin," said Martinez, who had been assigned to their observation post, "how did Ranger know this was going to happen? I mean, specifically how did he detect it before the electronic systems failed?" Kevin scratched behind Ranger's ears as he considered the question. "Dogs can hear frequencies we can't, detect sense at concentrations thousands of times lower than what humans notice, and sense electrical and magnetic field changes. Ranger was probably picking up on unusual sounds from the inmates preparing weapons, different body chemistry from men under extreme stress, and electrical irregularities in the system that preceded the failure." By midnight, order had been restored to Riverside State Penitentiary. The riot had been suppressed with minimal casualties, 3 inmates had been hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries, and 2 guards had been treated for minor cuts from thrown debris. Given the scale and planning of the riot, these casualty numbers were considered miraculous. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of what Ranger had detected. The riot had been planned for over 2 months, with inmates using a variety of methods to compromise the electronic security systems. They had timed their breakout attempt for the evening shift change when staffing was at its lowest levels. "If Thompson and his K-9 hadn't provided advance warning," said Warden Patricia Hayes during the post-incident briefing, "we could have been looking at dozens of serious injuries or deaths among both staff and inmates. The dog's alert behavior gave us just enough time to implement defensive measures." Kevin found himself in the unusual position of being interviewed by investigators, reporters, and prison officials who wanted to understand exactly how Ranger had detected the impending riot. The story of the prison dog who had saved hundreds of lives was spreading throughout the correctional system. "The most remarkable thing," Kevin explained to a reporter from the Corrections Today magazine, "is that Ranger wasn't detecting the riot itself, he was detecting the environmental changes that preceded it. The electrical system irregularities, the unusual stress chemicals the inmates were producing, the sounds of weapon preparation that were inaudible to human ears. He put together a threat assessment from dozens of subtle clues that no human or electronic system could have detected." Ranger, for his part, seemed to understand that he had done something important. The dog carried himself with even more confidence than usual, and Kevin noticed that other guards and staff members treated Ranger with a new level of respect and admiration. The following week brought a parade of officials to Riverside State Penitentiary, all wanting to understand how a prison dog had managed to predict and prevent what could have been one of the worst correctional facility riots in recent history. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a canine behavior specialist from the University of Pennsylvania, arrived to study Ranger's abilities and interview Kevin about the incident. Her findings would later be published in the Journal of Correctional Science and become required reading at correctional academies nationwide. What Ranger demonstrated, Dr. Mitchell explained to Kevin during their interview, was an integration of multiple sensory inputs to form a threat assessment that exceeded anything our current technology can achieve. He detected electrical anomalies, analyzed unusual human chemical signatures, processed acoustic information outside of human hearing range, and synthesized all of this into a behavioral response that saved hundreds of lives. The investigation also revealed just how sophisticated the inmates' planning had been. They had spent months learning the facility's electronic systems, identifying vulnerabilities, and organizing a command structure for their escape attempt. The riot was timed to coincide with a shift change, and they had planned routes through the facility that would have maximized their chances of reaching exterior walls. Without the advance warning your K-9 provided, said FBI Special Agent Robert Chen, who had been brought in to investigate the riot, this could have resulted in successful escapes, hostage situations, or mass casualties. The inmates had weapons, they had a plan, and they had detailed knowledge of our security procedures. Kevin was asked to present his experience at the National Correctional Officers Association conference, where he spoke to over 500 correctional professionals about the importance of trusting K-9 partners and recognizing the early warning signs that animals can provide. "Ranger didn't just save my life that night," Kevin told the conference audience. He demonstrated that properly trained dogs can serve as an early warning system for threats that our technology and human observation might miss entirely. The Riverside State Penitentiary riot and Rangers' role in preventing catastrophic casualties led to significant changes in correctional facility security protocols nationwide. The Federal Bureau of Prisons issued new guidelines requiring all maximum security facilities to maintain K-9 units specifically trained for riot prediction and early threat detection. Kevin and Ranger became instructors at the National K-9 Training Center, teaching other correctional officers and their dogs to recognize and respond to the subtle environmental changes that can precede major security incidents. The key, Kevin would tell new handler teams, is learning to trust your dog's instincts even when you can't see or understand what they're detecting. These animals process information in ways that complement human observation and electronic surveillance systems. Ranger's success also led to research into developing electronic systems that could mimic some of the dog's threat detection abilities. While technology couldn't replicate Ranger's integration of multiple sensory inputs, engineers were able to design monitoring systems that were more sensitive to the types of environmental changes that had preceded the riot. The case study of Ranger's early warning became required curriculum at correctional academies, and Kevin found himself traveling to facilities throughout the country to share their experience and train new K-9 teams. "What we learned," Kevin would explain during these training sessions, "is that riots don't just happen spontaneously. There are always precursor signs, changes in inmate behavior, unusual stress levels, equipment tampering, and environmental modifications. Dogs like Ranger can detect these changes days or even weeks before human observers notice them." 2 years after the riot, Kevin and Ranger continued their work at Riverside State Penitentiary, but their role had expanded significantly. They were now part of a specialized threat assessment team that included behavioral psychologists, intelligence analysts, and electronic surveillance specialists. Ranger's daily routine included specific protocols for early threat detection, and Kevin had learned to recognize and document the subtle changes in his partner's behavior that might indicate developing security risks. The relationship between Kevin and Ranger has become a model for how human-animal partnerships can enhance institutional security, said Warden Hayes during a visit from corrections officials from other states. "They've prevented 3 other potential security incidents since the riot, all because we've learned to take Ranger's alerts seriously." The facility had also implemented new technology based on lessons learned from Ranger's detection methods. Acoustic monitoring systems that could detect sounds outside of human hearing range, chemical sensors that analyzed air quality for stress-related compounds, and electrical monitoring systems that could identify the types of irregularities that had preceded the riot. But everyone understood that technology was only part of the solution. Ranger processes information in real time and makes threat assessments that integrate dozens of variables, Kevin explained to visitors. "No computer system we have can match that level of sophisticated analysis." The partnership had also had a profound effect on the facility's overall culture. Inmates and staff alike understood that Ranger was not just a security measure but a life-saving early warning system that protected everyone in the facility. 5 years after the riot, the story of Ranger and Kevin had become legendary in correctional circles. The dog who had prevented a catastrophic riot was featured in training materials, academic studies, and policy documents throughout the corrections system. Kevin, now a senior instructor at the National K-9 Training Center, continued to work with Ranger, though the dog was beginning to show signs of age. At 11 years old, Ranger moved a bit slower, but his instincts remained as sharp as ever. "The most important thing I've learned," Kevin would tell new correctional officers during training, "is that security isn't just about walls, cameras, and electronic systems. It's about partnerships, between humans and animals, between technology and instinct, between vigilance and trust." The Riverside State Penitentiary had become one of the safest maximum security facilities in the country, with a security record that other institutions studied and attempted to replicate. The early warning systems developed around Ranger's abilities had prevented dozens of potential incidents and saved countless lives. Ranger had been awarded the National Hero Dog Award, the first prison dog ever to receive the honor, and his story was included in textbooks used by criminal justice students throughout the country. "When I first started working with Ranger," Kevin reflected during a recent interview, "I thought his job was to detect contraband and maintain order. I never imagined that he would become a threat prediction system that could save hundreds of lives by detecting dangers that humans and technology couldn't perceive." As they walked their familiar patrol routes through the facility, Kevin often reflected on that Tuesday evening when Ranger's urgent warnings had prevented what could have been a catastrophic tragedy. The dog's ability to synthesize environmental information and predict danger had not only saved lives but had revolutionized how correctional facilities approached security. "Ready for another patrol, partner?" Kevin would ask each evening as they prepared for their shift. Ranger's tail would wag, and together they would begin their rounds, two professionals whose partnership had proven that the most sophisticated security system ever developed was the bond between a dedicated officer and his four-legged partner. If this incredible story of Ranger and Kevin touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing true stories about the extraordinary abilities of working dogs and their human partners. These remarkable animals prove every day that heroism comes in all forms, sometimes on four legs.